This is a podcast about one woman's mission to help entrepreneurs and business owners write better business books. Each week, we tackle your writing excuses, because there are excuses too, and help you beat the blank page of doom so that you can write the book that'll grow your life and your business. Now here's your host, Vicky Fraser.
Hello and welcome to the 1000 Authors Show. I am Vicky Fraser, and this week I've replaced my lovely husband Joe with a lovely human being called Kristin Quiroz Bayona, and she is a podcasting expert and also a travel podcaster. She has a really cool travel podcast, and we got talking about podcasting, storytelling, and the power of storytelling, and the power of storytelling to raise marginalized voices and lift people up and generally make the world a better place. And I thought, I have to get you to come on the podcast and talk about this. And also because I wanted to be able to help authors and writers to use podcasting to sell more books, to leverage their books, to get more out of their books. So I hope that you enjoy listening to this podcast as much as I enjoyed interviewing Kristin. And yeah, check out her resources. She's got a free workshop. She's got some other resources available as well. So check those out. The links are in the show notes, and enjoy. Hi, Kristin. I'm here with Kristin Quiroz Bayona, and we are talking all things podcast. Welcome to the 1000 Authors Show. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk with you.
Cool. This is going to be great. I'm very excited about this because I have all sorts of questions to ask you on my own behalf as well as on my listeners' behalf. So I'm really looking forward to this. But before we start, I ask all of my guests, what are you reading at the moment?
Okay, so I just finished The Girl with the Louding Voice, if you can see it here, by Abi Dare. I think that's how you say her name. It's about a teenage girl growing up in Nigeria. And honestly, I didn't know that much about Nigeria. She has sort of this harrowing story, but then it kind of sprinkles like facts about Nigeria. I didn't know there was a Nollywood, like a Bollywood. So that was super fascinating to me. So I just learned a lot about the culture, customs. So that was, I enjoyed it. And then the one I'm reading now, though, that I just started, and I've seen it, it's an older book. I've seen it for a while, but it's The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. And it's about a library, and it's a mystery. And I'm super excited. I just started it, and I've had my eye on it, and I found it used, and I'm like just waiting to jump into it.
Oh, amazing. Well, thank you. That's two great book recommendations there. I'm gonna jump on both of those because I'm going on holiday next week, so I need more books.
Oh, nice.
So I should do that. Thank you. Right. Let's talk about you and who you are. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then I've got a load of questions for you.
Yeah, so I am a travel podcaster. I started my travel podcast in the middle of the pandemic, in the summer of 2020. I felt like, we couldn't travel, but we, a lot of us still wanted to talk about travel. And it was just something that I really wanted to do. I started my blog in 2019, and I started feeling like it was really solitary. And I wanted like connection with others. I'm an introvert, but I still love that sort of one-on-one, like juicy, get into it conversation. So I was just like, podcasting was kind of pulling me. So I thought, well, a pandemic really helps you assess like, what's important to you, and maybe you should just do it now as opposed to later.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the impetus. And then, we had in the US, we had a huge social justice movement that continues throughout 2021. And I'm sure will continue for a long time until things make, bigger strides. But that was going on as I started my podcast. And I really felt like it was an opportunity to be intentional about whose stories I share on my podcast, whose stories weren't I seeing. And, travel space is primarily, well, like a lot of spaces, historically has been, white, male, told through that lens. So how could I bring another other perspectives to it. So that's my travel podcast. It's like what I'm really passionate about. And then I also created a course, and I have another thing that I'm putting out there where I help aspiring women and women of color entrepreneurs amplify their voices through podcasting. So I help them just start it, launch it, and get it out there, because I think we need to hear more of our voices. We need those perspectives. They're important, and that's what I do.
Which is so cool. I love the idea of starting a travel podcast in the middle of a pandemic when we can't travel, by the way. I can't actually do it, but I can talk about it, which is almost as, well, not almost as good as it helps.
It does, yeah.
And I just love the raising of people's voices whose voices are traditionally not heard as well. And you and I have talked about that before. So I know that, that aligns really closely with what I'm doing. So I just think that's brilliant. So with that in mind, why do you love podcasts so much? What do you think makes them so special?
Oh, I think it's because, so I majored in literature in college. And so I love stories, storytelling. And I think that podcasting has a lot of that. It's just oral storytelling. Yeah. It can be, whether it's, if you're doing a solo episodes where it's just you speaking to people. I mean, you have an opportunity to share your story and then, or teach. And so I'm a big learner. I'm a huge, I love to learn. And that's one of my core values. And so I think, whether it's you speaking or you interviewing someone and getting to hear their stories and hear their knowledge and expertise, it just combines the two things that I really love, which is storytelling and learning. And, we might talk about this later, but, storytelling is such a great way to learn and have it really sink in and create empathy. And so that's what I love, just from a soul, oh, this is podcasting. But I also think it's really great for, for businesses, because it's this content generator where you start with your podcast and then you can just reuse that in every one of your channels, platforms, and you can do social media, you can create a blog post, you can leverage that into writing an article for someone. It's just really powerful. And I can't think of another medium where, YouTube's got to be quick, right? People's attention spans are really short and it's got to be a little flashy. Blogs, they take a little bit more time, and people aren't connecting with you necessarily as much as when they're hearing your voice, hearing you speak to them. So it's a really unique opportunity, I think, to connect with people, because you're in their ears. It's such an intimate experience for anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. I mean, that's a long time. And then you're kind of in their lives. You're there when they're cooking dinner, or when they're, cleaning the house, or, walking the dog. You become incorporated. So it's just a very unique opportunity, I think, to connect with people in a different way. And then also the networking. Oh my goodness. That's been one of the funnest parts for me, is being able to meet just such interesting people. And then, sometimes you find that there are opportunities or collaborations that just align. And so those are just a few reasons why I just love it so much.
Yeah, I obviously love podcasts as well. This is episode 261, I think, now that
I know you are a veteran. I am so impressed.
And you say that, but I still feel like a total beginner, because I just wing it every week, which is part of the reason why I'm really excited about talking to you. Although even just winging it every week, I know that I've built up those relationships with people from afar, and people will come and talk to me, or in the days when we could talk to people in real life, but they would come and they'll be, oh, you sound just like you're on your, just like on your podcast, and they will ask me things about my life that I've talked about. And so that is the power of hearing people's voices and telling those stories and inviting people in, I guess.
Yeah, and they feel like they know you, which is like, if you're thinking about from just a human connection point, I mean, that's really, awesome. Like people like respond to you in a positive way. And then from like a business standpoint, it's like, well, people like want to work with people they think like are their friends, or they want to buy from people who they think that, they, seem like someone who could be their friend. So yeah, it's definitely like powerful.
It really is. So being as authors and writing and books are my thing, how can authors and writers use podcasts specifically, do you think, to increase their visibility? How can they be useful?
Yeah, so I think, you could do it one of two ways. I think you could use a podcast to either like I envision this, and I'm working with an author right now. We're kind of thinking about ideas, but you could create a podcast that really supports your book. And I could see doing it where an idea is where you could create a podcast that leads into your book launch to get like excitement and to be able to plug it and then have that sort of, then the book launch, the tour, et cetera. Another way though would be to publish your book and then have the podcast be an extension of your book. So you could maybe take a chapter and create an episode. You could maybe do behind the scenes, like, maybe on tour. I mean, there's so many ways that you could leverage it. I mean, obviously, if you didn't create your own podcast, you could book yourself on that would be the thing to do, is book yourself on interviews on podcasts would be very, very important. And I would encourage that. But just thinking about ideas of if you wanted to utilize podcasting as a companion to your book, I think it could be really powerful because there's just so many places you can go. You've written the content, right? And then to think about, who could you have on your show? Who did you use as a resource that maybe you could bring in? And then, I think there are a lot of ways that you could create engagement, like you could have writing prompts, or depending on what your book is about, you could offer like a daily affirmation, or maybe there's exercises, or maybe there's just something that you can get people to sort of engage with your book content a little bit more.
Yeah, honestly, even just that, my brain is like exploding with 3,000 ideas for what I could do now. And
there's
really exciting
things. Yeah.
And I just also wanted to make the point that, because you said, you could create something leading up to the book launch or something that's kind of spin off from your book. And I mentioned that I'm on like episode, 53 million, whatever, but you don't have to have a long running podcast, do you? You can just create just a short run.
Yes, that's the thing. I mean, it could just be specifically for your book, and it could be, 10 episodes. I mean, that's 10 weeks. I mean, that's a good chunk, and that's why I can encourage people to, like, with podcasting, I mean, you're not necessarily, there aren't as many constraints as other things. So your audience is creative, obviously. I mean, it's, a writer. So like, think outside the box, just think creatively. Don't put yourself in a box. It's like you can do seasons. You can do, I'm only going to do 10 episodes. You can create something that works for you, I think, and still like get a lot of value from podcasting.
Yeah. And like, even just one of the things that I've just pinged at me is like, I can imagine doing, like you said, behind the scenes. I love the idea of kind of going into my writing process and being like, oh, this is how I wrote this chapter. And these were all of the ridiculous thoughts that I had in my head. And, the things that I did. And this particular chapter was powered by pretzels. I literally ate pretzels for the entire evening. And, that kind of thing, to give people an insight. I think that could be really fun.
Oh, I love that. I mean, you're so creative. You probably have, it sounds like you have like 10,000 ideas. But yeah, I think people want that stuff because it makes them feel like less alone. Like it makes them feel like, oh, okay, I'm not the only one who does the pretzels or whatever snack it is.
The fizzy blue €3 wine. That was not a good.
Oh gosh.
Exactly as bad as it sounds. But no, I think, and that again is the power of podcasting, isn't it? Is to show your voice and your experience and to show people who think that, oh my gosh, I'm a total freak for doing things this way. It's like, no, actually there are other people who do it. They might not do it exactly the same way as you, but there are enough similarities to show you that, okay, this could work. And it's my story interlinks with your story.
Right. I want to share there's a book called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert.
I have it on my shelf.
It's a great book. I had read it. I had no idea that she had a podcast with it. And this was, you and I had talked about before, how can podcasting, what are these ideas? We brainstormed a little bit. And then as I was doing research for this episode, I found her podcast. And so let me tell you the structure, because this might be helpful for listeners to just get them thinking. But I thought this was a really great idea. And you could steal bits from it maybe.
Oh yeah, thank you.
But so she, I don't think it was, I think it was for a certain period of time that she had this podcast, but she had on a writer who had a problem, either it was writer's block or some kind of writing type of problem. She coached them. Then she spoke with a famous person about a Neil Gaiman, about author or a creative about the problem. And then she circled back with the guest who had the problem and kind of gave them, more coaching, which I thought was genius. I'm kind of hooked on it now. It was from 2016 and I just found it. So I'm obviously behind the the times, but it's kind of amazing. And I'm I don't know, it just gave me so many ideas of how you could piece that apart. You wouldn't have to necessarily do it in that exact, template, but there are so many ideas there of how you could use your podcast to help people. And it all started with her book. So just wanted to throw that out there to kind of give people ideas, just think about, how you can really engage with people and help them.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Because I did not realize that she had a podcast either. And now you mention it, another friend of mine mentioned it to me as well a few weeks ago. So I need to, because I don't really drive anywhere anymore. I don't listen to podcasts often. So I'm going to need to get back into the podcast listening.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for that. That's brilliant. Okay, so I have so many more questions. We're probably going to have to come back and do this again. But I did have a question that I think will be really super useful, because you mentioned getting onto other people's podcasts as well, which is obviously really important. It's something that I don't do enough of. I need to go and do more of. And one of the reasons that I don't pitch myself to more podcasts, apart from the fact that I don't want to be annoying, and I get a lot of annoying pitches for this podcast, and I'm I don't want to be like that. But the other reason is I don't feel like I have a strategy for what to do with the podcast interview afterwards. So I was wondering if you had any tips for how to make the most of an interview that someone has done on a podcast.
Yeah, definitely. So you definitely want to leverage it as much as you can. It's great content. So you want to have a call to action. That's, every show you go on, you want to, make sure that you're using that platform to reach new audiences, whether it's a freebie or a book or a website that you want them to go to. And then, if it makes sense, you could do a podcast swap. If you feel like I've done that. I had a guest on and we just clicked and he was like, I want you to come on my podcast. And that's such a great, organic way to get on podcasts. So something that you can do if you're on a podcast and you're kind of feeling it out and you're feeling like you really connect with that person, kind of takes out that icky pitching yourself, like you were talking about. And then another thing that I was able to do with a guest that I had on my show is we did a follow-up IG Live, Instagram Live. So that was really fun. It's like a way to extend the conversation. And it was only like 15 minutes because obviously you want them to listen to the podcast. But just thinking about other platforms outside the podcast where you can kind of get excitement and plug it a little bit. So using your social media and then like just sharing it everywhere. Sharing it on your social media, your website, your email, send it out to your email list. And using it in your press kit, like if you have a media kit or you have a media page on your website, like definitely linking it there. But those are kind of the big ways to just, give your podcast appearance like some more legs. It's just putting it out there and letting people know about it and then seeing where the opportunities where this can become more like, more like an interview or more like a live or, another thing too is if you ever interview anyone who's associated with the media, they're a journalist, how can you potentially leverage that to, do you need writing or do you need, do you want an article? Obviously not in a way that bugs them, but in a way that's like super helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of become the go-to person for them. It's like, Vicky will talk to us anytime about writing and, how to write and writing tips and stuff like that. So become that person.
Exactly.
Yeah. Brill. That was really great tips. Thank you for that. I'm feeling quite proud that I have a media page with my podcast appearances on already. So
oh, good for you. Yeah, you're on it. Yeah.
I am on it. But yeah, okay. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about, and we touched on this right at the beginning, because podcasts are such a great way to help people to become more visible, I wanted to talk a little bit about why visibility is so important and why representation is so important, especially for women and people of color and the LGBTQ community. So can you talk a little bit about that and why that is so important to you?
Yeah. So, when we can uplift like marginalized voices, it does so many things. So it breaks down like barriers to people who are different from us. And when we have that exposure of their experiences, it makes us be more empathetic. It breaks down anything that we've put up, ideas of like, they're not like me, I don't like, they're so different. That othering, it really breaks that down when we can see them and hear their stories and see them for who they are. And then, it also helps to disprove stereotypes. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to generalize someone when we see multiple different stories from the same quote unquote type of person, right? And it gives us that like nuanced version of them and not that general like stereotypical version. So it really helps us to see people for who they are and not just kind of blanket, have a blanketed idea of, okay, that other person is that other way kind of thing. And then I think it also is important for, the people who have been marginalized to own their story, to tell their story, and not have other people constantly shaping the narrative, right? Yeah. So, because it's like who owns the story owns the power, right? Mm-hmm. So the more that we can own our stories and tell them in our own words, and, you think about if you hear a story third person, it's way less accurate than when you're hearing it first person. Yes. So it just takes that layer away and allows people to hear us through our own words and our own voices. And then also, representation does matter. We need to see ourselves doing all different kinds of things so that we can aspire to those things. And it's kind of like you can't reach for what you don't see. And that's so important to see options and think, oh, I can do that. That person looks like me. That person sounds like me or has a shared lived experience. Mm-hmm. That's possible for me. So I did think those are just a few reasons why it's just so important for more voices and diverse voices to be visible and out there. And that's like why I'm so passionate about it.
Yeah. And plus, on top of all that, or underneath all that, it just makes the world more interesting, right? It's like, who wants to see the same stuff all the time?
Oh, 100%. Yes. I know, at that basic level, it's like, do we want to be bored?
Yeah, so I don't want to just read stories from, dusty old white dudes all the time. I want to know what the rest of the, 90% of the world is like.
Right. It's like, I've heard that. I've heard it. I've been there.
Yeah. And that is why it's just why I think this kind of thing is great. Is the more different stories that we can put out there, the better, because the internet is, it's what we, I mean, there's so much to it, but the surface of what we see is just the same faces shouting the same messages all the time. And so it'd be nice to dilute that with something that's a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, I think we want to have enriched lives, right? We don't want just, I mean, I would hope, we don't want to just kind of dial it in and like have the same, like you're saying, same person talking to us. So it's a way to just, enrich your life and have, just have it be more colorful.
Yeah.
It's just never a bad thing.
So yeah, a little bit less Tony Robbins, a little bit more everybody else.
Yeah.
And on that note, where can we find out more about you, and how can you help anybody to do better in podcasting?
Yeah, so you can find me at explorerinyou.com.
Mm-hmm.
And anything podcast related is going to be on explorerinyou.com/podcast. So if you go to that tab and all the podcasting things are there, you can go to listen to my podcast. I also have a couple of ways that I could help you start your podcast. So I have a 30-day boot camp, which takes you from start to launch. And you get a little bit of coaching with me, and it's a course that you do with guidance. And then I just launched a 1-day VIP intensive. The VIP is because it's a very small group. So it's a five-person workshop where I help you in 1 day start your podcast. Because I know that we are busy entrepreneurs out here, and sometimes we just need the dedicated time and the guidance of someone saying, this is what you're doing now, and then this is what you're doing, and this is how you do it, to just get it out there. I'm excited about it because I feel like it's going to create like so much momentum for people to just like get it done and just get it out there. But I also have a free workshop that if you go to my website, you'll be able to click on the top of the page, and it's there. It's the 3 things that you need to know to start your podcast. So I walk you through that. It's free, and you can also download a workbook that helps you gain clarity on your vision and your goals, which I think is really important before you start your podcast, is to know what are you doing and where are you going and why. So
yeah, which I did not know when I first started my podcast. So that would have been super useful. That is so brilliant, Kristin. Thank you. So that's explorerinyou.com/podcast.
Yes.
Amazing. And all of those links will be in the show notes. And I'm also going to pop your Instagram handles in there as well for people to find you on Instagram, if that is okay with you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Lovely. And and then just I could talk to you all day, so I think we should catch up again in a few months and talk more podcasting and things. But for now,
yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute delight talking to you.
Yes, thank you for having me on. And we didn't have any kitties interrupting us, so
she's been purring really quietly on my knee like a good girl. So
nice.
Right, thank you so much. I will definitely be in touch. And yeah, thanks again. It's been brilliant.
Thank you, Vicky. Have a great day.
Hey there, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Kristin. I had an absolute whale of a time talking to her, and I know that you will have got loads of really useful tips, and hopefully you'll go and have a look at her website, The Explorer in You, check out her free workshop, also check out her paid course and her VIP coaching as well if you're thinking of starting your own podcast, because I tell you, I wish I had had access to those things when I started my podcast. Even though I've been doing this for a long time, it's a lot to think about. And so if you can have someone tell you exactly what you need to do throughout the day, grab it with both hands. It will be invaluable. So thank you, Kristin. And next week, Joe will be back. Joe and I will be back from our holiday because we are currently on holiday as you're listening to this. We'll probably on our way home, actually. And we'll be back same time next week with another episode of the 1000 Authors Show. In the meantime, if you enjoyed this episode, go and rate us 5 stars or however many stars you think we deserve. Leave us a review. We would love that. If you've listened to every episode, please let me know. Email me, vicky@moxiebooks.co.uk, and I will send you something silly to say thank you. And I have a group coaching program, the Weird and Wonderful Book Society, which is what I've decided to call it, a 3-month book writing program starting mid to late June. I'm really excited about it. So if you have a book clanging around in your head that you're desperate to write and you've been putting it off, maybe you've been thinking about it for 6 months, a year, now's the time. We're going to get it done in 3 months. We are going to get your shitty first draft, and it's not going to be shitty, it's going to be sparkling. We're going to get your first draft done, and you're going to feel amazing, and you're going to be that close to getting your book published. So come join us. If you'd like more information about that, drop me an email, vicky@moxiebooks.co.uk, or we will be popping a link up to the sales page very soon. More details next week. Thank you, and I will see you soon. Bye.
Thanks for listening. You can find links and show notes on the website at moxiebooks.co.uk/podcast, where you can also sign up for the best daily emails in the multiverse and find loads of free resources to help you write your book. We'll be back the same time next week with more tales from the book writing trenches and the latest on what the tiny sheeps have been up to.